Hi there, beautiful souls. Welcome back, or welcome to The Hawk. My name is Lana Zielinski, and I work in the spirit dimensions. As always, in all my videos, simply take what resonates, and you're welcome to leave the rest right here. Spirit. Spirit is absolutely incredible to work with. I know I've shared that statement in many videos, but it is so true. My days are filled with a lot of spirit activity. Quite often they're just hanging out with me, chit-chatting. Sometimes there's a little bit of playful shenanigans, and they're always really respectful. Now, sometimes, not always, but sometimes, spirit will come to me ahead of an event that I'm going to be attending, like a group session or a platform mediumship event. They will hop in my vehicle if I'm driving to an event just to kind of chit-chat with me along the way, or they will talk to me if I'm en route to my office to do an in-person session. They'll just chit-chat about who they are, and they're eager to talk to their loved ones. Sometimes they show up in my office here at home before a Zoom session, and sometimes they don't show up until a session starts, which is all absolutely incredible. Either way, we're working, because every day that I work with spirit, every day is very different. That's one of the things I love the most about what I do, is there's never 2 days the same. Now, I'm going to tell you a really cool little story that's kind of really got my attention the last couple weeks. Haley and I were planning a little road trip to a neighboring town about 45 minutes from where we live. Haley and I live about 15 minutes apart or so. So about 45 minutes away, we had planned this little road trip to a poorhouse that was in operation in the late 1800s. So a couple of days before our planned departure to this poorhouse, I had a spirit come to me. And he was chit-chatting about how excited he was to tell his story, because the story about the poorhouse, not all of it was documented properly, and parts of it are not in any documentation records at all. And he asked me to meet him in a graveyard. So I was really excited to meet him there, and Haley and I had this discussion about this graveyard that we had to kind of also find in this little town that we had planned to film in. So I'll just fast forward a little bit. Haley and I had a conflict in our schedules and weren't able to go on the date that we had originally planned in both of our agendas. Life happens. So this spirit, whose name is Charles, continued to hang out with me, and he was asking me, when are you rebooking? And I really want to meet you in the cemetery. And I asked him, I said, well, you know what, we can have this chat now. And he was like really reluctant to talk to me. He's like, no, I have to meet you in the cemetery. This conversation needs to happen in the cemetery. There's so much that you need to know. And I just kept reassuring him that Haley and I will rebook. You know, I promised him that we would get this sorted out, and I would meet him in the cemetery and have a chat. So, as patient as he's been making it very clear that I need to get this into my agenda to book. He really wants to talk. And I've offered a few times to do some channeling with him and get his story before I go. And he's like, no, it's got to happen in the cemetery. You'll understand why when you get there. So life's been busy. I have had quite a few events that I've been planning, and some charity events. So I haven't been able to get the date rebooked with Haley. And the spirit activity has started. A little minor stuff with, you know, my keys not being where they usually are. A random spot of spilt milk. Nobody in my house had been to the fridge that morning, and here there was this spot of spilt milk. And I sat down to have a chit chat with the spirit, and I said, I get it. We are going to rebook the road trip. I promise. Well, he decided today to bring me a couple of friends from the cemetery to talk me into moving my feet and getting this road trip booked. So he brought 2 more spirits. He brought James and William. And apparently, James and William connect to this first spirit. They all know each other. They knew each other back in the late 1800s as well. And they all have very similar things to talk to me about. And they'll only talk to me in the cemetery. And I've got no idea what the conversations are going to go in, but they're talking to me at length about truth and about what really happened. They're very focused on having their story told, because what's been said about them and what happened in that time frame isn't accurate, which I find absolutely fascinating. Now I get it, in that time frame, things weren't documented the way we document now, and even current documentation is open to translation depending on who's experiencing it and who is documenting it. Some things that are documented even today are not necessarily the truth. So they are very much wanting to speak their truth. And on that topic, quite often with spirit, when they communicate about, especially with historical events, they are very clear that their story and what's been reported isn't truth. And sometimes when they come with spirit activity, they're not necessarily dark spirits or haunting the place. They're trying to get their truth heard, which is a big deal for me, because I do think that most often, quite frequently, us living people lean into that fear space when it comes to why spirit's talking, or why they're so active in certain places and locations. Quite often it's because they're trying to say, hey, that's not what happened here. Please take a deeper look. And I think I'm going to dive into more of that, more locations of tapping into what does spirit say really happened here, because they do have a very valid point. If what's documented isn't the whole truth, nothing but the truth, and it's been kind of twisted or unreported, they do want to say we were living souls once, and what you know about us, the stories that are in the history books or the documentations that are in the old archives, not all of it's accurate. And these three spirits, I'm calling them the three Musketeers, because they're hanging out with me now until I rebook this trip with Haley. So Haley and I will be getting this into our schedule, because I need to keep my promise with these spirits that I will get out there and hear them. Spirit, they have a profound way of coming forward to speak what happened. And when you kind of look at a lot of things that get uncovered through history, for example, if there's been, a hidden grave site, or there's been something that wasn't documented properly, when you think about how they're found, spirit has played a part in that. They have, come forward to say, hey, look here, this is where I am. Here's where the truth is. And even though it may not seem like that from the outside looking in, on how things are discovered, don't kid yourself. Spirit's been all over it with wanting their truth heard, with wanting, their story to be told. And it's an absolutely fascinating experience to be part of that. But when you kind of take a look at things, even with missing people, quite often the missing people who have passed and their physical body is found, quite often spirit will say to me, we led people there, we led the search teams there, or we led the the police there, we helped in that with bringing forward where we were. And it's absolutely incredible to hear that from them. They don't connect to their physical bodies 100%. It's not about the physical body. When I ask them about that, is it about the remains? And they're very clear no, because they don't need the physical body anymore. It's about truth. Spirit's very truthful. And they push that. They push us to see it, to know it, and kind of for closure for living people, but also a little bit of closure for their soul too. Imagine, if your death was tragic, or if there was something secretive behind it, or way back in history, there was we did terrible things to people, in the history books, and we still do terrible things to people in the present time. But if you think about it, that if that was your soul, you would want your truth heard. And that's what Spirit's been chit-chatting with me about for the last couple of weeks is, Lana, come out and hear my story. Meet me in the graveyard and you'll understand. So I don't understand yet what's going to happen, but I'm quite confident, 100%, that I am going to have an amazing experience with Haley at that poorhouse and at that cemetery that they're asking me to meet them in. I do hope you enjoyed our little chit chat today. As always, I'm wishing you love, light, blessings, and a spirit guided day.